Hey everybody, welcome to Home Recording Made Easy and Mix Tip Tuesday, where every Tuesday I show you a new mixing tip to help you make more professional sounding mixes in your home studio. Before we get to this week's tip, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. Make sure you hit that notification bell and also stick around till the end of the video, because at the end of the video I have something I want to give you absolutely free that's really going to help you with your mixing training, so be sure to stick around. Okay, everybody, so in this week's Mix Tip Tuesday, we're going to talk about adding console emulation to your mix to really start to build the foundation of giving, you know, a mix that's just used when you're using just stock plugins and can kind of have like kind of a sterile feel to it. It doesn't have that vibe. It doesn't have that mojo. We talk a lot about this with third-party plugins. You can go search all the plugin reviews I've done in the archive on this YouTube channel. But if you're someone who just uses stock plugins and you're looking to get into third-party plugins, but you don't know what to buy, you don't want to spend a ton of money, you don't have the budget, you're confused, you don't want to be overwhelmed, one of the easiest things that you can do is you can pick up a couple of plugins, and if it's the only two analog plugins or third-party plugins that you have, it'll make a world of difference to your mix. The first one is a tape machine plugin, which we talked about a few episodes ago. You can go back and search the playlist. And the second one here is console emulation. And so there are a couple of companies on the market that makes these types of plugins. One being Slate Digital, the Virtual Console Collection, or the VCC, which is what I have on the screen here. And the second one is by Waves, called the NLS, which is the non-linear summing plugin, which we'll take a look at in a second. We won't listen to it, but we'll take a look at it. But again, all of these plugins have reviews already done on the YouTube channel. And what console emulation is going to do for us, it's going to allow us to have the vibe or the sound emulation of an old school console. So if we take a look, for example, at this Virtual Console Collection by Slate Digital, the VCC, this particular plugin has 6 different consoles that they've emulated. And down here in the center, you have this knob where you can switch between all 6 consoles. Now, every console is going to sound a little different, but they're all going to be somewhat similar. So the one that we're going to listen to today is the Brit 4KE, which is one of the SSL consoles. They have a Brit 4KG, which is a different series SSL console. They have a USA console, which is an API console. They have the Brit N, which is a Neve console. They have this little funny symbol here, a little weird symbol that it looks like it's a Trident console. And then down here is an RC2, pardon me, which is an old Abbey Road kind of a console from the 60s. And what they've done is they've modeled the input transformers and the preamp sections of those consoles to give a little bit of extra vibe, total harmonic distortion, and a bunch of stuff under the hood that'll kind of color your mix. Now, if you're not a technical person, we're not going to get into all the technicalities. You could go to their website. You can read all the little nuances if you want. But I want to make this simple for a lot of my beginners. I don't want to overwhelm you or confuse you. I don't even want to show you necessarily how to use this plugin. There's another review already done there. Just know that we're going to use one of the SSL consoles. Down here, we have a drive button on how hard you want to push this signal. The harder you drive it, the little more color and distortion you're going to get. I typically will set this around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, noon. It's all personal preference. There's an input and output knob. And then down here we have a group knob. Now what's good about the group knob is that if you set, the way you set this plugin is you put this on every single one of your tracks. And if you set to a group, you can turn all the plugins on and off in your session in one click of a button, which we're going to show you. Okay, so this is on the master bus. The way you set this plugin up is quite simple. On the master bus, you're going to put this plugin here. You're going to use the virtual mix bus. This is a 2-part plugin, the Virtual Console Collection. You have the virtual mix bus, which is the gray face, light gray face here on the master bus. And then on every one of your individual tracks, you're going to put another instance of your Slate Digital, the virtual mix rack, and you're going to use the virtual channel. This is the second part of the plugin that goes on the individual channels. You can see it's laid out exactly the same. It's just a different kind of algorithm they used under the hood, so it sounds slightly different. The mix bus portion of the plugin, let me just bring that up in a second. And again, you can read all their information on the Slate website. You can see it's laid out exactly the same. The virtual mix bus is going to model the output bus of the console that we're modeling, where the channel is going to be a discrete channel on the console itself. Okay, whether it's channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, they've modeled a specific input channel. The mix bus is the output master bus section. Okay, but they look exactly the same. So when you put everything to group 1, and then if you want to change, or shut everything off, you just hit group bypass, and that will turn all the plugins on and off. Okay, so you set that on every one of your individual channels. And as you can see across this session, I have drums, bass, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, keyboards, and piano. You can see I have an instance of the virtual mix rack. It's the only plugin on this mix across the entire mix. Okay, now all my tracks are going down to a busing system, and I don't have anything on the busing system at this point because I'm going to save that for a second to try to show you a couple of workarounds here if you have a slower computer, but stay with me. So right now we have it on the master bus. We have that plugin, and on all the individual tracks, except for the vocal tracks, which I have turned down because for copyright reasons, I don't want to get any copyright strikes, so I'm leaving the vocal channels down. We're just going to hear the instrumentation. Now, right now, none of these plugins are turned on. They're all in the off state. Here is a quick static mix of a section of what this song sounds like. Okay, so that is just the raw tracks, faders thrown up, quick little static mix, no EQ, no compression, no nothing, okay? So now, all I did was just drop this plugin across all of my tracks, okay? I didn't even tweak it except that I put everything on the Brit 4KE. I turned up the drive to about 1 o'clock. I didn't set any inputs, any output levels, nothing. Just dropped it on the tracks, okay? Now I'm gonna play back that same section of music, and then about, a third of the way through, I'm gonna turn on all the plugins. You'll see all the power lights come on. You may hear a little hiccup in the audio, and that's normal for all these plugins. And you're gonna hear the difference of what this sounds like. Just dropping it on in its default setting, this is what this one plugin can do to our mix with no other processing. Here we go. So we'll start with it off, and then we'll turn it on. Keep your eye on the power buttons. Okay, so it gets a tiny bit louder because I didn't gain stage the plugin at all. It's for another video. I just dropped it on its default setting. But you can instantly hear how everything gets a little bit more present. There's a little bit more punch on the bottom end. It gets a little bit warmer, and it just kind of warms everything up a little bit in a very pleasant way. It's almost, there's a big EQ shift tonally, and that's what this plugin will do for you just by dropping them on, okay? Now, the trick to using this kind of a plugin, whether you use this one or whether you use the NLS by Waves, which we'll take a look at in a second, is the way it's really kind of designed is to put them across all of your tracks. So the bigger your session, the more plugins you're going to have on your session. And then this session happens to be, 30 some odd tracks, 28 tracks. Okay, so if you have 28 plus the master bus, you have 29 instances of this plugin without doing any other processing. So one of the questions that'll come up, or what you might find, is that, Dave, I can't put that on my session. If I do that, all of a sudden my computer crashes. I have all kinds of latency issues, all kinds of crackles and pops and audio artifacts in my audio. My computer just can't handle that because maybe I have an older computer where you only have maybe 8 gigs of RAM. You're only using like a dual core processor. Again, whether it's Mac or PC doesn't matter. And so your computer can't handle that. So you say, well, what can I do? I can't put this many plugins on my mix. I haven't even started with EQ and compression yet. One thing that you can do is if you use a busing system, you can just put these on the master bus and on your buses. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. So I'm going to just take the one on the master bus. I'm just going to drag it over to all of our buses here. Okay. So now on the buses, I have this plugin, and I'm using the virtual mix bus, right? Because it's on a bus, so I want to use this part of the plugin. Okay. Now I'm going to take them off, or I'll shut them off, I should say. Let me shut off all these on all the individual tracks. So now they're not on the individual tracks. We're just going to turn them on and off on the master bus and on the buses, right? Just by turning these power buttons on and off here. So just putting now, what do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 instances as opposed to 30 instances. Here's what the difference is. Now it's going to be very similar, but it's going to be a little more subtle. But this is a good workaround. So yeah, I'll start with them off. I'll turn them on, turn them off, turn them on so you can hear the difference. Here we go. Okay, so did you hear the difference? Same kind of thing, a little bit more present, a little bit more punchy on the low end, a little bit warmer, shaves off that harshness on the top end a little bit, but it's a little more subtle because we're using less instances of the plugin, and that's okay. Even when you use all of these across all of the tracks, you know, again, it's a pretty significant difference. But if you're new to using these kinds of plugins, or you're new to mixing in general, you may say, well, that's not really that big of a difference, Dave. It isn't, and it's not really intended to be. It's supposed to be subtle. Okay, but what works with this particular plugin, it's really the accumulative effect of every single track put together as a collective mix. So if you were to just solo up the snare drum and turn the snare drum plugin on and off, you would really hear very little, if any, difference. It's the accumulative effect. So one workaround, again, if you have a slower computer, is to just put them on the buses. Okay, but if you have the horsepower in your computer to put them on all the tracks, including the buses, which is what we're going to do now. Let's turn on all of these tracks now. So now you hear the accumulative effect of not only on the buses, but also on all the individual tracks. Okay, so again, we're going to start with them off. Studio One, I can turn everything off just by one click of a button. Okay, so every plugin is turned off. We'll do the same thing. I will turn them on about halfway through, and then I'll shut it on and off, on and off. And now you're going to be listening to all the individual tracks, as well as the buses, as well as the master bus. Here we go. Okay, so you have a much better foundation to start with before you start even using EQ and compression on your individual tracks. This is a great way to get a session that was recorded fairly well and to just bring it up a notch before you start doing anything else to it. And it starts to add some of that analog warmth and vibe. And we'll talk a little bit more about what I can help you with in a second if you stick around till the end of the video. Okay, so that's one way to do this. Again, if you go back a few Mix Tip Tuesdays ago, the tape machine would be the second plugin. This combination, tape machine and virtual console collection or console emulation of some kind, those two plugins, if you had no other third-party plugins, just those two will make a world of difference. Your mix will be 50% better sounding if you know how to use the plugins. We'll talk about that in a second, than you do just with stock plugins. So I highly recommend it. So now the other alternative to the virtual console collection by Slate Digital, which is my favorite of the two. I use it in all of my courses pretty much. If you've seen any one of my mixing courses, I use this plugin all the time. But another alternative to this, same kind of concept, is the Waves NLS. And again, we won't listen to this here. I don't want to take up too much time on this video. There is a review on my YouTube channel of this particular plugin, if Studio One will load it for us here. Okay, come on, come on, come on. New version of Studio One takes forever to load plugins. Okay, so here is the mix bus, or the bus portion of the plugin that you would put, okay? And it's used the same way. Now, this particular plugin only has 3 consoles emulated as opposed to 6 on the Slate Digital one. They have the spike, which is their Neve, okay? So the virtual console has a Neve, the NLS has a Neve. The spike is the SSL, correct? The Nevo is the Neve. Okay, so both plugins have both. But what this one has that the Slate Digital does not is the mic. The mic is the TG12345 console, which is again an old 60s console that they used at Abbey Road Studios. And Waves makes also the TG12345 channel strip, which is amazing, and again I have a plugin review for that. So this has a really good console. Whenever I want to use the TG12345 channel strip, I'll use this particular plugin, the mic, which is great. But the other ones are, I think the Slate Digital ones are better. So you have the stereo part of the plugin that goes on the buses, and then just like with the virtual console, you also have the ones that go on the individual channels. Again, and you have the 3 consoles. So you'd put this on your buses, and you would put this on your individual channels, and you get the same effect. Either one is great. My personal feeling is I like the Slate Digital one better, but I do use this one from time to time. The good news with the Waves is you could go demo their plugins for 14 days. You can check out the nonlinear summing plugin, and you could pick this up for $30 several times throughout the course of the year. They're always putting this on sale. You're not able to demo the Slate Digital stuff, but if you have their everything bundle, their monthly subscription, that plugin as well as the rest of their plugins are all included in that one monthly subscription cost there. Okay, so that is console emulation to help you start to add some vibe to your mix. Now, if you really want to get into these third-party plugins or you already have a bunch of them and you can't get your mix to sound good, and I get students that email me this every single week, one of the things that I highly recommend is you want to check out the training course, Mixing with Analog Style Plugins Made Easy. That is a 15-hour course across several different videos where I take you from a very beginner stage of how these plugins work, these analog style plugins, including console emulation. We look at tape machines, channel strips, console emulation, EQs, compressors, and most importantly, how to effectively use these third-party analog style plugins to make your mix sound good. Because if you don't know how to use these plugins, it will make your mix sound worse. Highly recommend the course. You'll also get all the audio files so you can mix the song that I am mixing in the demonstration from start to finish, and you're going to see a whole host of stuff. If you have third-party plugins or you're thinking about buying any third-party plugins, you absolutely want to get this course. And in the description box below, there's going to be a coupon code so you can take 25% off of that course. You use it at checkout at homerecordingmadeeasy.com. The description box below will have the coupon code, and it'll probably come up here on the screen in a second. So take 25% off. Mixing with Analog Style Plugins Made Easy. Get hip to these third-party plugins. They make a huge difference. So thank you for joining me for this look at console emulation. I want to know what you think. Leave comments below and let me know. Do you use console emulation? Have you ever used them before? Which ones do you use? Are you confused by this stuff? What about third-party plugins in general? What plugins do you use? How do you use them? What do you struggle with? Let me know below so I can continue to make these videos to help you get better at using these plugins. And again, go out to homerecordingmadeeasy.com and make sure you get Mixing with Analog Style Plugins Made Easy and get 25% off today. Coupon code will be in the description box. Now, I also want to make sure I give you another free gift. If you have never been to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, I want to give you 5 free mixing training courses. Go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, right on the homepage, click the big orange button, get your 5 free courses today, worth about $200. Then you could take all these Mix Tip Tuesday videos that I've been putting together, and you can apply them to those mixing training courses. It's a perfect combination. If you want to get better at the craft of mixing, the only way to do it is to practice mixing with good recorded multi-tracks and have someone to show you step by step how to mix the stuff and how to use the plugins. And that's what these mixing courses will do for you. So go to homerecordingmadeeasy.com, get your 5 free mixing training courses. And last but certainly not least, mixingmadeeasy.net right here on the t-shirt. If you really want to learn the craft of mixing, you really want to join a community of like-minded home recording musicians and aspiring audio engineers to get better at the craft of mixing, and this is perfect if you're a beginner or an intermediate mixer, go to mixingmadeeasy.net and see what I have going on there. It will take your mixes from a demo sounding level to a professional sounding level inside of 6 or 8 months if you apply the training and the techniques. Wonderful community of people there. We give away lots of free plugins every single month. go check out mixingmadeeasy.net. And until the next Mix Tip Tuesday, I've been Dave with homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Thank you so much for your time, so much for your watching, and so much for your support. And I will see you next Tuesday. Take care.